Hello everybody and welcome back to Blue Jays Today. We're your boys. We always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host Adam Peddle.
And I'm your host Nicholas Blaylock. And today, folks, we're going to be talking about Danny Jansen. Recently, he came out and was talking about his contract situation with the Toronto Blue Jays. If you don't know, my guy's got 1 year left. 1 year left with Danny Jansen, and then he hits free agency. That is not something that we want to see. I think that's something that not a lot of Toronto Blue Jays fans want to see as a whole. We're going to talk about his contract situation, what it was that he had to say, and then just how important he is to this Toronto Blue Jays team. Before we get into it, folks, please make sure to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts down below. Now, Danny Jansen, he is honestly, I think one of the more underrated players just in the MLB as a whole. Like, he does not get talked about a whole lot, even though, statistically speaking, he is really, really good. In the last 3 years, I tweeted this out, he has been phenomenal at baseball, folks. Before we get into his stats, quick shout out to Battlegrounds. If you're looking to throw some axes, just have some fun, take your friends, take your date, take your family. It is a great time, guys. Battlegrounds, that's where you want to go. 237 batting average, 317, 487 slugging.
Nice.
For Danny Jansen in the last 3 years. I knew that this guy popped off, but those numbers, even when I tweeted that out, they kind of blew me away.
It's the isolated slugging for me. When you look at the batting average to the slugging, that's incredible. And it all comes out to a nice 805 OPS. And that's obviously very crucial to get that type of offensive production from a catcher.
Totally.
You're basically, any winning team is so happy with just having the catching spot just be a dead spot. Look at the Houston Astros. They don't have no problem winning games, and they have Martin Maldonado.
Yeah.
But what does Martin Maldonado provide to the Houston Astros that the Danny Jansen also provides to the Blue Jays? It's being a great team player.
Yeah, sure.
Being a great catcher, right? Having the ability to be a battery, right? They don't call it a battery for a reason, right? Being one end of the pitching side and the other, right? Like, you are working together. Every time that pitcher goes on the mound, who do they work with? Yeah, sure, Alejandro Kirk, but Danny Jansen's mostly out there for the Toronto Blue Jays catching these pitchers. You need to have that relationship. And Shai Davidi actually brought this up in an article right here. He tweeted out right now, basically saying how Jordan Romano at first thought that Danny Jansen might have hated him when they were in rookie ball together. They had a little incident where he bounced the ball and hit him in the face. But afterwards, Danny Jansen went out of his way to talk to Jordan Romano. And that just demonstrates the type of person he is and how he establishes relationships with these pitchers. You have to have chemistry when you're on the mound with your catcher. And he's done that for the Toronto Blue Jays for the last 5 years. Yeah, so you need to have that, and the Blue Jays need to have that moving forward.
Danny Jansen isn't just a slash line. I mean, the slash line itself is great. Right, and that's just one of the many reasons why you should love him. But he's also loved by his teammates. He also plays incredible defense as a catcher, calls a great game, and has a great rapport with a lot of the Toronto Blue Jays top pitchers. These are all things and check marks that you want to have if you are a catcher. And transitioning from that, right, moving on from Danny Jansen to somebody else, to Alejandro Kirk. Alejandro Kirk knows a lot of stuff. He's great. I think that he would do a great job with the Toronto Blue Jays as their lead catcher, but you're still going to have somebody else in there, and I don't know if I want that guy over Danny Jansen. I love having the tandem of Danny and of Kirk, having both of those guys pop off, and with Danny Jansen, only 1 year left on his contract, makes me kind of scared that we're going to lose him to free agency.
Yeah, look, when you trade Gabriel Moreno a year ago, I think you kind of drew the line in the sand where you're saying these are our guys, right? It's Alejandro Kirk and it's Danny Jansen, right? These are our tandem. You got to have them keep going forward. When I think about, again, all the great winning teams, they have a catcher that's been there for a long time. JT Realmuto with the Phillies, right? Martin Maldonado, I mentioned him, right? Will Smith with the Dodgers. He's obviously a young player, but he's going to be there for quite a long time. I wouldn't be surprised. Buster Posey with the San Francisco Giants. Now, I'm not saying the Toronto Blue Jays are those type of teams, but if you want to have that team, you got to have a catcher that knows the system of the Toronto Blue Jays well. To teach Danny Jansen, or our new catcher, the entire system of the Toronto Blue Jays, that's going to be a lot of work. Yeah, you have Alejandro Kirk, but you're going to have another catcher coming in there as well. Danny Jansen's going to be the core, right, of this Blue Jays team. Yeah. You know why they always say it's great to have a broadcaster be a catcher? Because they know the game very well. Danny Jansen's one of, I've never met the guy, don't know him, but I know him from interviews. I know him from how people talk about him. Most knowledgeable guy out there on the Blue Jays. Makes everyone feel like a teammate.
100%, dude. Well, let's transition to what it was that he had to say about his contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. Recently, he came out and he was talking about the entire situation, folks. He said, "We talked a little bit. And I think both parties just agreed to carry to see what happens this year. So the talks, they have been minimal. Now, they've talked a little bit, but, I mean, they kind of just said, okay, well, we're going to see what happens. And I understand from a Toronto Blue Jays standpoint, right, because Danny Jansen, the one knock on this dude, the one knock that I think that you can keep coming back to is the health. And this has been an issue for a long time, right? It feels like every year Danny Jansen is running into something, right? When you look at 2021, 2022, 2023, look at the at-bats.
Yeah.
The highest at-bats he had was last year, and last year was only 268, and he was injured for a time frame. So if you're the Blue Jays, it's really tough to evaluate what you're going to pay this dude because of that, and because he is so great on the field, but he's never on the field for a full season. So I understand why they're having a hard time, both of them coming to an agreement. But at the same point, it is a scary place to be because if Danny Jansen comes out here and puts up like a 450 at-bat season, doesn't get injured, I am so confident that he will have the stats to go along with a great overall year. And then he might think, I'm going to go to free agency, right? If he puts up a season like that, that's the type of year that he might think, okay, I can really get paid. Let me go see what the market has to say.
Yeah, I think if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, that might be a reality you have to face with. It's going to be tough to have him just go out there and test the market. Just like JT Realmuto, though, I could see him testing the market and then going, you know what, I'm going to come back to Toronto because I do know this organization well. They do treat me well. And I think that, like we said right off the top, he is underrated. So maybe people aren't valuing him as much because of the injuries, right? But the Blue Jays know the value you're going to get from Danny Jansen from a team standpoint.
Well,
right?
I would hope that if that were to happen, right? Let's say Danny Jansen does have a really good year. They don't have a whole lot of talks happening in the regular season because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Danny Jansen has a great season. He does what I'm saying. He goes to free agency. I would hope that if you are the Toronto Blue Jays, you are always going to have the best offer. Because at the end of the day, there is so many other things other than the slash line, like we've been saying. He knows your system better than anybody. He knows your pitchers better than anybody. If I have Ricky Tiedemann coming up to the MLB and he's making his first start, I want that guy throwing to Danny Jansen.
Correct.
Because Danny Jansen is going to calm him down and he's going to call a great game. That is something that other teams who don't know Danny Jansen, don't have him in their system, they might not necessarily be evaluating that or paying him for that. So if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, I would want you to always have the best offer for Danny Jansen.
What's the thing that they have moving beyond 2025? Because we, as Blue Jay fans, and everybody around the Blue Jays, know that after 2025, it's a bunch of question marks, especially with that lineup. Mostly with that lineup.
Sure.
What's the one thing that they have guaranteed past 2025? A good pitching rotation.
Right.
They have a lot of guys locked down, right? Kevin Gausman, Barrios has got some player options. They're going to have Alek Manoah. They're going to have Ricky Tiedemann. They're going to have Yariel Rodriguez, right? There's going to be still guys with the team. I need to have Danny Jansen with those guys. To completely change that, it changes their numbers. You always see stat lines, or splits, of pitchers with different catchers. And sometimes they're very drastic. You got to have Danny Jansen still with this Toronto Blue Jays team moving forward if you want to have somewhat of a comfortable window, at least on the pitching side of things, moving forward.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And I do want to be very clear here. This doesn't mean this entire conversation, at least from my standpoint, this doesn't mean that I'm down on Alejandro Kirk even in the slightest.
Oh, yeah. No,
this has nothing to do with Alejandro Kirk. I still want Alejandro Kirk in the lineup almost every day. I still want him catching these pitchers. I want him to have a few pitchers that he has that rapport with. That's something that I want. I just love the tandem of both Danny and of Kirk. I love what Danny brings to this team that you don't see on the slash line. That is something that you just can't evaluate. And as all of these guys have come out and said, he is the greatest dude. He is a locker room presence. We love him. If you're the Blue Jays, I think that you just hold on to that, dude. So it is a scary place to be, and I don't really... I get why they're not having conversations because of the health, but at the same point, I kind of wish that you did have a little bit more talks with him and say, hey, we are interested. I hope that those conversations at some point in the season, they do resume, and maybe we can get something done before free agency happens.
Correct. Another thing about, just to kind of jump off the Kirk thing, we haven't seen Kirk catch a majority of the workload. Yeah, we did see him when Danny goes on the IR, but we also see another guy come up, right? Some sort of third catcher come up, like a Heine, come up and try to catch, right? But we haven't seen that. We have seen Danny Jansen carry the workload for the Blue Jays. And look, it's different than Bo and Vlad, for example. Bo and Vlad, they're leaving at the same time. They're superstars, right? Some people could argue that, but they're superstars. They're cornerstones of your franchise. So that conversation is different. Whereas Danny Jansen, well, we have 2 years left to compete, but in this last year, if he doesn't sign back, you're going to have no Danny Jansen. So what is the pitching staff going to look like without Danny Jansen? That's a scary thought. You want to keep him at least for that year, if not more, to see that pitching staff come and do exactly what they've been doing for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't think that Danny Jansen and his contract has anything to do with the window. I think that even if you're rebuilding, you still want Danny. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like, even if you were
absolutely.
letting Bo and Vlad walk, you still want to have Danny locked down because, again, he is going to help you develop your pitchers. He is going to help that pitching staff remain strong, and he's going to help the team camaraderie just remain the way that it is and keep everyone happy. So, Blue Jays, if you're listening to this right now, give Danny the bag. Danny, if you're listening, do your best to stay healthy, dude. That's the one thing I think holding him back.
Wear like a metal sheet in front of your hands,
Yeah.
bro. Like you can't get hit on the hands.
Maybe it is time to put on some batting gloves with a little protection on them or something.
See, he does wear the protection. It's just, I don't know how it keeps happening, bro.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happens.
It just happens all the time. So, folks, let us know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. In conclusion, guys, we want Danny back, although looking at the situation, looking at the conversations, it is very possible that he might get to free agency and they might need to address it come October, come November.
Now, real quick, do you think that they would overpay for Danny Jansen if they needed to? Time for a quick shout out to Betway. Betway is the best place to make all of your sports bets on all of your favorite teams. Betway is also in collaboration with iGaming Ontario. Must be 19 years older to participate. And guys, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content.
Yeah, I do. And I want them to.
Yeah.
I think that,
Yeah.
like, honestly, the biggest point that I'm going to leave this with is if another team, I'm just going to use an example, like the Yankees. If the Yankees are offering 50, you're offering 60. If the Yankees are offering 100, you're offering 110. You know, I mean, those are crazy numbers. But I think that the value that he brings to you is always going to be higher because he knows your system, because he knows your guys, because he has the rapport. The value he brings to your team will always be higher than another team. And therefore, you should always be the highest bidder for Danny Jansen.
Yeah, other teams are looking at, maybe he can help with our rebuild, but he's got to learn the whole system of how we operate right now. And maybe we'll get some upside with the bat. With the Blue Jays, it's like, man, you can't take away the last 5 years. You know what I mean? You've grown that 5 years of experience. You got to keep him, bro.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you ask, I bet this. If you ask any single pitcher on the Toronto Blue Jays, if they like Danny Jansen, Danny Jansen's a stand-up guy, they're going to say yes. Yeah. And for that reason alone, you keep him on this ball team.
Absolutely. Guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And $3 a month to become a Patreon member. Shout out and thank you to all of our current Patreon members and to our YouTube members. You guys are absolutely awesome.
Thanks so much for watching, everybody.
And go Jays, go!